Where's the weirdest place you've ever found something? How do I start this? There's been some interesting writings within the stall walls of a public bathroom. Today, we're going to be looking at some writings from unexpected locations. I have a screen here. It's this tier list thing. There's two kind of qualities that are affecting this. One, how unexpected the place is that this writing appears, and two, how good the writing actually is that appears in that location. So those are our two main grading criteria, and everything is subjective, so ultimately it is up to me anyway. Well, guys, if this is your first time seeing me, hello, my name is Ethan, and this is my YouTube channel. This is the place where I like to gather a bunch of people to talk about writing and creative pursuits. I am also writing my first debut novel and was hoping to find a way to build a community. So go ahead and hit like, comment, subscribe if you feel called to do so. Now, let me kind of show you what's going on here. We have the list of these pictures here. The first one up is a show called We Bare Bears. I walk out into the living room and We Bare Bears is on the TV. They are watching it. I sit down for a moment as I'm still waking up and I start watching the show, and then I find myself chuckling at the jokes and I find myself amused by the actual writing that's within this. I was like, oh, this is pretty clever. Like for morning cartoons, on the TV, I was pretty invested. And then I went online and looked up some clips, and I have to give the writers a lot of credit with this show. I was very impressed, and it was, I think children's stuff always gets kind of a bad rap in general anyways. A lot of people think, oh, it's just for kids, and then kind of end up overlooking it. It's kind of an obvious place to overlook, but one that can consistently have some really strong writing. Writing is very good. The animation's very good too, and it was a very unexpected place. However, I cannot put it in the S tier, right? S tier being the very top. I got to give it an A. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and bestow an A upon We Bare Bears. Now this one is very interesting. Do you know the Old Spice commercials? Specifically the Old Spice commercials with the guy who smells like the way your man could smell like. I thought these were original and creative. And the first time I remember watching it thinking it was very funny. Some Old Spice commercials are hit and miss. Some of them are not that clever or thoughtful. I thought this one was very clever. It kind of had that vibe of like the most interesting man in the world sort of thing, but just on like smells. This was certainly one that made me respect, right? It made me actually think not about just what it was selling, but about the people behind the actual production. And so for that, I'm going to have to give the Old Spice commercial smell like a man. I'm going to have to give that an S tier. Next up is another show. And a lot of people would say this show is aimed for kids. I'm talking about Star Wars: The Clone Wars. It's made as like a prequel to the prequels. Well, no, it's a prequel to some of the prequels, not all of the prequels. Well, I don't really fully understand Star Wars and how the whole timeline works. However, I do understand the reputation that this show holds, and I've seen a few episodes. I have not seen the whole thing. The stories and the characters, specifically the characters within this show, are written very well. It is an A, going up there, still behind We Bare Bears. I'm going to give it to We Bare Bears the edge on that, keeping them over here. Another commercial. This is the last commercial, I promise. But Bud Light commercials are like a holy grail of old TV commercials. When you watch it, it transports you back in time. You can go on YouTube. You're on YouTube right now. Presumably, you can go search after this video different old Bud Light videos. Let's see, I think Doritos was one of them, Bud Light. Some of these were just like the heavy hitters of the Super Bowl that made the halftime and the commercials just as entertaining as some of as the game, and even more so for people who weren't interested in football, and have set a very high standard for everything else. It's kind of the bar of if it's a good commercial or not. Does it meet that Bud Light? And I'm gonna have to, surprisingly, I'm gonna put that in the S tier and above the Old Spice. All right, Shutter Island as our first movie, and it was one of those experiences where it caught me completely off guard. I was alone at night in the dark. I couldn't sleep, sitting at a laptop in the dining room there in my dad's apartment, and I just couldn't sleep. And I was like, oh, Leonardo DiCaprio, he's cool. And I clicked on Shutter Island, not really knowing what I was getting myself into. And to this day, it is still one of my favorite movies of all time. It's not unexpected in the sense of when you look at the movie and you go on the IMDb, it's not unexpected in the way that you think, because it's Martin Scorsese and it's Leonardo DiCaprio and you have all this great music. It completely engrossed me. This movie is still one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's inspired the way that I write so much. So it's like at the very top in terms of the writing. Not everything about the movie is fantastic, but in terms of the writing, I love it. And it was unexpected for me in a personal experience. So subjectively, I'm finally going to have to move it above a commercial. We do have another S, an S tier book. Dr. Seuss, the classic children's author. We Are the Sneetches. It's an elegant book with a lot of social commentary that is very powerful, still referenced today. There was a video that I watched that was referencing it the other day, and it's still a very apropos critique. If you have not read it, it is definitely worth a read and a very easy way for you to meet your book goals for the year. if you still count that. Maybe you don't count that. I would count it for sure. It is very well written. However, it is not very surprising. As we've established before, the kids' stuff can be very profound on itself, and Dr. Seuss was a very prolific author. So it is not to besmirch Dr. Seuss's name or besmirch the content of the book. However, it's just not as surprising because Dr. Seuss is a great author. Be a B tier. It feels wrong putting Dr. Seuss below those other two things, for sure. However, those two were just bigger surprises, right, than Dr. Seuss's. So that's the only reason why they're higher, not that they're any better written. All right, the next thing up is Lost, specifically the early seasons of Lost. I've never seen an episode more than once. Once is the exact number I've ever seen an episode from Lost, but there are still moments from those early seasons that are stuck in my head, and I don't know how old I was when it came out, but there is just some crazy writing in that thing. And it was supposed to be, to my knowledge, sort of a show that wasn't supposed to go as long as it did. It was not seen as something that would have the legs to carry it as long as it did. And the writers of that show just made something out of it. So I'm going to put it up there. It's definitely more, I'm going to say it's more at the top of A. And, thinking back on some things, I'm going to take We Bare Bears and put it down here with B, because it is children. Just because it's children's, like, that was surprising. I think the way that it hit me, it's somewhere in there. I might have messed it up. We'll see. All right, next up, another kids medium. A lot of kids mediums in here. Kung Fu Panda. I love Kung Fu Panda. And Kung Fu Panda is such a great way to introduce characters, and it's such a good model of how to write a story. It has great examples for all different types of characters, And also the hero's journey is very easy to follow, very clear within the story. It's just such a solidly written film, and then terrifically acted by some great actors like Jack Black and Jackie Chan. It's just a terrific movie. Now, that being said, it is not surprising as some of these other things, because it has some of that star power. And it's not a very like advanced story, because it is very vanilla in terms of its storytelling. It's funny, has great action in it, therefore it goes into C. Now, that being said, I feel bad putting it in C, because I feel like I'm saying that's like the rating I would give it. It's an easy 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 movie for me. It's just in terms of my metrics of being how surprising it is and how well written it is why it's on there. So it kind of meets that expectation because it's very basic, and it's not very surprising because of all the other stuff that we've already talked about. Adventure Time. I remember when it first came out, and it had that like quirky, like mid 2010s humor, and it was like, ooh, I'm like that quirky show, that kind of has the goofball kid doing the quirky stuff. And that was sort of my jam at the time, right? That was what I related to, and I really enjoyed it. And yet it still had these like deeper themes. Like once you got a little bit older and realized, and you looked into it, you're like, oh, there's some dark stuff in Adventure Time. The writing is also okay. The show's not bad. The writing is decent. It has decent legs. My feelings towards the show is sort of like, it's okay. There's some really cool things in there, but it's not something that I would gush about. So this is actually going to enter as a D tier thing for me, because there's a little bit of positive in there, and it's not bad. It's not a bad show. However, it is in D tier. Mass Effect, the trilogy. This game blew my mind in terms of what was capable for a video game. So Mass Effect was the first game I ever realized that had multiple games, and decisions that you could make in game one would affect story beats in the story in game three. Like all your decisions carry throughout all the games. There is a ridiculous amount of voice acting, and the dialogue options are immense. And I've played the game several times, and I'm sure I've never heard every line of dialogue that's in the game. Surprising from the fact that video games don't normally get put on that platform. People think, the general populace think of storytelling. Video games are not up there. And so I am going to put Mass Effect up there in the A. Death Note was one that has really stuck with me. I've seen the show twice. The first time I binge watched the show, and the second time I got the streaming service that it was on, and I was like, oh, my wife has never seen anime. Let me show her an anime and see what her like thoughts are on it. So I showed her Death Note. And I remember that first moment of when we were watching a couple episodes. I was like, give it a second. Let's watch a couple episodes. And then she goes, play the next one. And we like stay up late watching these episodes of Death Note. It was really fun. Really good memory from that. I'm going to put it right up there next to Shutter Island. Shutter Island's still more impactful to me than that. All right, next is Reddit. Essays of E.B. White. People were rejecting him everywhere. Newspapers rejecting him. He would offer his writings to people. They would reject him. He was living on a boat because he had nowhere else to live at one point. And he was just all over the place. His life was a mess because he wanted to write, but nobody wanted him to write. And this was a surprising book. If you have not read the Essays of E.B. White, it is surprisingly good. And there's a lot of good stuff in there. Very encouraging for writers like myself. Also, the level of writing that he gives is very high. So I'm going to have to give E.B. White, I'm putting him the top of B, just because I was not expecting essays. You know what? No. I'm gonna put him at the bottom of A because he was a little bit more impactful, like in my personal journeys. There it is. That is the tier list of the most surprising, well-written pieces of writing or content that I have encountered. If you know of an unexpected, well-written piece of content, make sure you let me know about it, or let all of us know about it down below in the comments. Once again, please leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.